Hello there, welcome back to my channel. My last vlog felt very incomplete because I got cut off, my camera died, and I felt like I owed y'all another vlog this week, mostly so I can give you updates on some of the changes that I made in that prior vlog. Go back and watch it if you haven't seen it. And it's a Friday. It is Friday, February 20th. Friday, I should say. And Fridays are always great days. We're gonna make a new seating chart. We're working on math plans and getting prepared for STAAR, which we had a little bit of a shock, if you will, 2 days ago. I see I'm still recovering, but I'm gonna take you through that, more information to come, and we're just gonna spend the day together. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, first things first, I need to give y'all an update on the yarn ball, which if you can't tell, I'm very excited about. I'm happy to report that the yarn ball has held up after tossing it around for a few days. I did give my students instructions that when they're holding it to please not pull on the yarn pieces because I cannot guarantee how firmly they are attached on the inside, because attaching the zip tie in the middle was a little dicey for a bit. But if you're curious how I made this, I explained it horribly in my last vlog, but there's also a blog post that I followed. I will link that because it's probably better that you follow that instead of my instructions. That being said, I have absolutely loved this for math. I've just been tossing it to students, whether they're at their seats or up here on the carpet, and it does its job. Like if it hits them in the face because they weren't paying attention, it doesn't hurt because it's yarn.
I can always block the blow, or I can counter it with it.
If they don't catch it and it falls to the floor, it doesn't roll away because it's yarn. It's soft and fun to hold, and it's bright, and it makes me happy. So I still don't know if it was worth it because it was far more time consuming than I thought it would be. However, there's just something special about it. Knowing that I made it, it was very nostalgic because I feel like when I first started teaching, I used to make everything for my classroom, and then eventually it turned to just buying stuff, and it felt good to make something again. So that has been a hit. I shared in our Valentine's Day party video that there were leftover snacks and then also M&Ms because we had this like trail mix bar. So I have been handing these out. I literally just take the lid off and kind of fill the lid with some M&Ms, and then as we are answering questions in class, I'll like randomly hand out M&Ms, and it's been a fantastic engagement strategy. And then I thought I'd share this. So one of my students made an estimation jar, which we use estimation 180 sometimes as either a brain break in math or as a morning meeting activity. I will link the website if you've never used it. Essentially, he has different photos of items, and you have to estimate how many there are. So for example, it will have like a pack of paper, and they have to guess how many pieces of paper in the pack, and then they will build on each other. So then it'll show like a ream of paper, and they have to estimate how many pages. But this student made an estimation jar with Orbeez, and I had them bring it in so that we could do it with the class. I actually did it with my afternoon class yesterday, but today I will do it during my morning class, during our morning meeting. And then I did end up getting a new container to organize pencils. So I was debating on getting like 2 different jars or something, but I ended up finding this organizer on Amazon where it's all one piece, but it is split into 3 sections. They also had one split into 2 sections and 4 sections. So I will link it if you are interested. I made up labels, very basic, that just say sharp, dull, and then colored pencils. And I now have a student who will sharpen the dull pencils at the end of the day and move them over. This one was picked up off of the floor after we had already sharpened them. But I ended up moving, first of all, how do you lose an entire Sterlite container like this? Y'all, if this does not get claimed from the Lost and Found, I'm taking it. But I put the crayon holder just inside of the main Lost and Found bin, which does not look as empty as it did the other day, but that's okay. The same student who sharpens the pencils will also then empty the pencil sharpener, which is super nice. And on the note of student jobs, I don't assign many actual jobs in my classroom. I did assign at the beginning of the year my Geek Squad, which are the students that organize the Chromebooks at the end of the day and make sure they are all plugged in. That's one that I needed to be consistent, and ideally, I like to choose students who have done it before because they're familiar with the process. Other than that, I don't really assign student jobs. I let them just kind of happen organically. Almost every year, I can guarantee you, you will have at least 1 or 2 students who are willing to help out with things and will volunteer for that. And so I let it be known to my students, hey, if you see something that needs to be done around the classroom and you want to be responsible for it, come talk to me. And just recently, I had a student who noticed that, hey, when we turn in Tuesday folders on Wednesday morning, Mrs. Emerson goes through and puts them in number order and also follows up with any students who didn't turn in their Tuesday folder. And so they asked me if they could do that job. And I was like, absolutely. And so now Wednesday morning, I don't have to worry about that. I have a student who goes through, puts them all in number order. And then if they notice that a folder is missing, they go to that student and they say, hey, do you have your Tuesday folder? And they have them go double check their backpack. So that's something that just happened organically because a student noticed it and offered to do it. And they do a fantastic job. I also recently had students who realized that our wobble stools, so I have 6 wobble stools around my back table. I also have 4 that are under a table on the side of the classroom. They sometimes, they get a little wonky throughout the day, and they will go through at the end of the day and make sure that they are all lined up. I also had a student who wanted to be responsible for checking the floor at the end of the day. We all help pick up trash and lost and found items, but they wanted to go through and kind of do the final sweep. And I was like, yes, please, say less, that's your job. And I even have a little handheld vacuum that's under my sink. And so I was like, hey, if you want to use the vacuum, here you go, be my guest. So just a little bit on how I do student jobs. Let's transition into science. So this week, it's a short week. We only had school with students Wednesday, Thursday, and then today. But we have been focusing on how rocks store natural resources. So talking about permeability, impermeability, and then porosity, so whether it has pores or not, and then how it's able to store water, oil, natural gas. So we did an investigation on Wednesday. Let me go ahead and walk you through that. So these are just the pieces that I've left out for my students to reference, but essentially, we had a cup of water, and students put in a sponge, and students put in a hunk of clay. They let it absorb for 30 seconds, and then they would take it out, let it drip, so don't shake it, don't squeeze it, but just let it drip, and then they would put it over top of this graduated cylinder. Is this technically a graduated cylinder? I don't know, but it has measurements on it. So they would squeeze out as much water as possible and measure in milliliters how much water came out. So with the sponge, it was somewhere between 30 and 60 milliliters, depending on the size of the sponge. And then for the clay, either nothing would come out, or some of them were like, it's 1 milliliter because we had 2 drops of water in here. But we use this to talk about porosity. So a sponge has pores in it that are able to hold on to water, whereas the clay would be impermeable. And we use that to then kind of jump into talking about layers of rock within the earth and how water will get trapped beneath impermeable layers, and that forms an aquifer. And we took notes yesterday. Have those notes yet been put on the board? No, they have not, but they've been put in our notebook. And so for right now, that is good enough. Now, as much as possible in science, I like to connect it to the real world or things that they're familiar with. For example, our last unit was all about conserving energy and getting rid of or disposing things that can't be recycled in a responsible way. And so we looked at our local recycling center and what can go there versus what can't. So for rocks and storing natural resources, I always like to talk to them about geodes because I just think they're so cool. And I remember breaking open geodes as a kid, and it's a firm memory stuck in my brain because I thought it was awesome. The cool thing about this year is that I did not have to purchase any additional materials because I had them left over from last year. So last year, I had gotten this Break Your Own Geodes kit on Amazon. It came with 25 medium geodes. Last year, I broke roughly half of them, maybe a little bit more than half, because there were ones that would not break. I was hitting them with the hammer. I'm like, why isn't it breaking? But I broke them open for the students to see, and then I let them each keep a piece. Now, this year, I kind of forgot that when I opened up the box, I'm like, oh yeah, these are the ones that didn't want to break easily last year, which means they're gonna be a little bit of a struggle this year. So I opted to just break them at home and then bring in the pieces. Last year, I took them outside and was trying to break them in real time, but it was stressful because then I felt really weak when I couldn't get them to break and it was just too much. So this year I opted for the shortcut. I already have a container with them broken up, and they vary in sizes, of course. Like we've got, here's one, hopefully it's, I don't even know if, there we go, I think it's focused on it. And then we've got like, this one was a real chunkster. This was the hardest one, it did not want to break. And then there's little tiny pieces like this. So they're all just kind of different shapes and sizes, but I am gonna let them each keep a piece. I counted to make sure I had enough for both classes, and I do. I love those. Some of them have like, these are pieces of sock, like the fabric stuck on the outside, because when you're breaking geodes, because it's gonna break into a bunch of pieces, you wanna try to contain it. So put the geode in a sock and then you hit it with a hammer. That way all the pieces are in the sock and then you can dump it out. Now, use socks that you plan to throw away because they will get holes in them from hitting them with the hammer. But some of them were very hard to break. As I mentioned, I had hit it a lot. And so there's pieces of sock like embedded now into the rock. Today, I have a video. I'll put a screenshot of the thumbnail up here, but it is all about geodes. It's from SciShow Kids, which I love their videos. So I'm gonna first show them a picture of a geode, ask if they know what it is. I will pass one around so they can look at it up close. We'll watch the video. There also are some pages in our textbook about geodes that we will read. And then I will let them each keep a piece. Typically what I do is I just kind of lay out the pieces on the back table, and then I use a random generator to go through their names. That way it's fair. Whenever your name comes up, you get to come back and pick up one. I will probably kind of sort it, and so that there are some bigger chunks for both the morning class and afternoon class. Otherwise it wouldn't be fair, because I can guarantee you the morning class is gonna take all of the big chunks, and then that would not leave any for the afternoon class. But that is the plan for science today. Let's go ahead and talk about like the schedule and what all our goals are for the day. Okay, so today, fairly normal math lesson, like nothing fancy. We are working on adding mixed numbers. Yesterday, we added a mixed number with just a fraction. Today, we're gonna add 2 mixed numbers. So just to show you some of the strategies and ways that I kind of teach that. So for an example of 3 2/4 plus 1 3/4. First, we talk about adding like units. So our application problem deals with adding meters and centimeters, and we talk about like adding the meters and adding the centimeters, or converting the meters to centimeters and then adding them. So for example, they could add the whole, so 3 plus 1 is 4, and then they can add the fractions, 2/4 plus 3/4 is 5/4, and then we use a lot of number bonds to convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. So they can pull out 1 whole, which is 4/4, and then there's 1/4 left, add those together to get 5 1/4. They could turn both of these into improper fractions and then add them together. I also show them this kind of arrow method. So basically making jumps as they add. So 3 2/4 plus 1 whole would be 4 2/4, plus 2/4 to get to the next whole. So 4 2/4 plus 2/4 is 5 wholes, and then there's 1/4 left. That gets them to 5 1/4. And then we also talk about stacking the numbers to add vertically, kind of like the standard algorithm for addition. So making sure that you line up your fractions and your whole numbers, add your fractions, add your wholes. So just a few different strategies that I use. Now, yesterday's lesson, where we were just adding a fraction, I felt like went really well. And honestly, like bringing them up to the carpet to do a quick mini lesson, like whole group, direct instruction, and passing out M&Ms, like they were super engaged. I know, I probably shouldn't be passing out M&Ms as like an engagement strategy.
They are not just ordinary jelly beans, little girl. These are extraordinary jelly beans.
But it worked, and the kids that didn't want to participate suddenly wanted to participate, and therefore were more engaged, and therefore got the instruction much better. So between that and the yarn ball, I felt like math has been going well because my students are more engaged, which is great because this is a topic that sometimes loses them, you know what I mean? Fractions are hard, and we've been doing fractions for like weeks, months at this point, honestly. But that is the plan for math. They are gonna have a graded assignment, which is converting improper fractions to mixed numbers to improper fractions, and then line plots with mixed numbers, which we covered last week. So that will be their independent assignment today. That will be graded, which means I will need to get that graded in addition to their math homework. And science and social studies, I'm excited because we're gonna have our full time. Usually on Fridays we have study hall, but because it was a short week, we decided as a team not to do study hall. And when we do study hall, it takes out 15 minutes from instruction, which means that we have to either cut out science or social studies or condense them in order to fit them both in. But because we're not doing study hall today, I have my full time, and I feel like the science lesson isn't gonna need as much time as, for example, if we're doing like an investigation. And that means I can dedicate more time to social studies because we are preparing to take our next test next week, all about the Civil War and Reconstruction. And for example, yesterday, we're talking about Reconstruction in the South and how there are all of these economic changes and social changes and political changes. And yesterday we focused on the Black Codes, which restricted the lives of people who were formerly enslaved. And we had such great discussions because my students, there were so many things where they're like, what? And like they couldn't wrap their brain around it. And we talked about just how different it was back then and how people had different perspectives than what we have today. They asked really great questions. So for example, one of my students asked, well, if these were happening here in Texas, couldn't they just go somewhere else? Couldn't they go to another state? And we talked about how the southern states all had some variation of Black codes. They were slightly different from state to state because they were created locally. And then that way the US government didn't have jurisdiction over those rules. But at the same time, if you were previously enslaved, you did not have the means to travel to another state. You didn't have the money to do that. And we talked about, sharecropping and how there's this cycle of poverty. It was such a good discussion. And so when we have more time to dedicate to social studies, we can have those discussions, which makes me really happy as a teacher, because then I feel like they're actually getting it. And yay, okay, so it's gonna be a good day. That being said, I have a little over an hour until my students come in this morning, and on Fridays, I do actually have planning time. Like the past 2 days, my planning time has been meetings. So today I can actually get things done, which is exciting. I mentioned grading. So I, as much as possible, try to grade assignments the day that they are turned in and get them put in the grade book. And last year and this year, I've stuck with that, and it just makes me feel a lot less stressed. So today I will be grading their math homework and that math assignment. For homework, my students get homework on Friday. So right now, like new homework assignments are out on their desk. They are due the following Friday. But I do have students who will turn it in early, especially having like a long weekend. I had students who turned it in on Wednesday. When they turn it in early, I grade it as it comes in. So I already have a stack of homeworks that are graded and have been put in the grade book. Today, it's just grading any assignments that are turned in this morning. So in addition to that, I still need to schedule my Friday newsletter. So every Friday, I send an email to families and it kind of recaps like, hey, here's what we were up to this week. Here are some reminders for upcoming events, and here's what we're learning next week. It gives them like a look back and a look forward, if you will. And typically I have it kind of drafted or scheduled by like Wednesday or at the latest Thursday. And I think whenever we have short weeks, it just throws everything off. So I have yet to do that. I need to get that done this morning. In fact, on my to-do list, so I use the Google Tasks app, I will list, so like right here, it lists my things to do, and I will order them. So I'm gonna schedule the email before I get grading done. I do need to also spend time planning for math. So I mentioned that we had a little bit of a shock. It was Wednesday morning. It was a bright, sunny morning. It was Wednesday morning where I sat down and I said, okay, we're like 2 months out from STAAR. So STAAR is like our big standardized test that we take. In 4th grade, we take a math STAAR and a reading STAAR. And so I was like, let me backtrack from STAAR and plan out, like we want 10 review days prior to STAAR. And then I need to make sure that we're gonna get in all of our lessons. And I mapped it out, had to do a little bit of adjusting, finagling, if you will, but I got it to work. And I was like, all right, cool. And then Wednesday during our planning time, we met math and science teachers, and I was going through the math plans, and I kind of shared, all right, here's the plan for STAAR, and like we're wrapping up module 5, we're gonna take our test next week, we're gonna start module 6, wrap that up, have 2 weeks of review before STAAR. And all of a sudden I was like, hold on. And I like went back and I was like, wait, there's a whole other module that we're supposed to fit in before STAAR. Module 7. What? Now, module 7, not everything is on the STAAR test. So there are some things that if they're not gonna be tested, we plan to teach them after STAAR. But there are 11 days of lessons that we have to teach prior to STAAR that were not really accounted for. And we have been purposefully, with our math units, at the end of the unit, we're given like a testing window, and we have been purposefully taking the test on the very first day of the testing window so we could roll into the next unit so we wouldn't get behind, and we've been sticking to that. The issue is there are no review days built into our pacing. So magically, I now need to find, ideally 10, it's not gonna be 10, it's gonna be like 8 review days prior to STAAR, which means the next 2 modules, I'm gonna have to condense and cut things out and prioritize, and it's frustrating because I don't wanna cut out content that they haven't gotten yet. For example, our next unit is on decimals. That is brand new to 4th grade. However, it is vital that we have time to review before STAAR. So, I need to sit down with a calendar and just really map it out. We're gonna take our current module test next Wednesday, so I need to have a plan before that so that when we start the next module, we have it the way that it needs to be. It's just, I'm trying not to think about it, and I'm a little bit stressed, but it's gonna be fine. It's always fine. At least that's what I tell myself. The last thing on my to-do list is to move desks. I like the way they are right now, but when my students are in their seats, it's a little bit tight between groups. So I wanna try a little bit of a different arrangement, probably go to some smaller groups. But that will be after school, because I told my students, I'm not moving desks for Friday. You're gonna keep your desks where they are now, and then when you come in on Monday, you will have new desks. So that is the plan. I'm gonna go ahead and sit down and try to map things out. I'll show you what I come up with. Wish me luck. Here is my very messy, imperfect, not the best, but gonna have to be good enough plan. So I printed calendars because I needed like physically in front of me to have it, to map it out. You all know I've shared before about my unit overviews, which are a Google Doc, and afterward I will go in and type in all the dates, but I felt like as I was planning it, I just needed paper. So the first thing I did, I pulled up the calendar and I put on there in red dates that are not flexible. So dates I have no control over. April 21st is the day we are taking Math STAAR. 2 weeks prior is when we take the reading STAAR, so I will not have instruction that day. There is no school on the 3rd. I also put in there when we have like house days, spring break, spring pictures, which just means we will probably have somewhat shortened time, although most likely we will take that time from science or social studies, and then a house day here. From there, I started at STAAR and I planned out the review days. So I said, all right, usually we do 10 review days, let's shorten it to 8 and just see if we can make that work. The final day before STAAR, I want to be a final review where we go over like what the testing website looks like, testing strategies, and then I want it just to be a fun day. I don't want them stressed out. So I kept that there. I did 2 days of geometry review, and I have those closest to the STAAR test because those I feel like they need the biggest refresher on. 2 days of fraction review, 1 day of decimal review, because in purple up here, this is our decimal unit. So they will have just learned that relatively recently. And then 2 days of whole number operations. Oh, I should have put day 1 and day 2. It's fine. Then I kind of came back over here and I said, all right, next week on Wednesday is when we are taking our module 5, not 6, CBA. That means we will start module 6 the next day. And I kind of then came back over here. I know I did this in such a janky way, but I looked at module 7 and I pulled out the lessons that had to get taught before STAAR because there are lessons in that module that are not tested on STAAR, so therefore we can wait and teach them after. So I said, okay, we definitely need a day on stem and leaf plots, and then measurement conversions is a majority of this unit. So I said, okay, let's do a day of measurement conversion word problems, just kind of like a final overview of all of that. We're gonna do converting mixed numbers into smaller units. Okay, I need to take care of this ant. Converting time and word problems. customary length and weight, customary liquid volume. Then I came up here and I said, okay, that means we can spend a day on measurement conversion tables. Then I started going through our decimal unit, which also includes financial literacy. Now with financial literacy, the only two tested skills are profit and then fixed and variable expenses. There also is a lesson on savings accounts, but that's not on the test. So I cut that one until after STAAR. I figured we need a day for the CBA, day for profit, and a day for fixed and variable expenses, but I'm also going to kind of embed some of this into our like fluency practice and like application problems leading up to STAAR. Addition and subtraction of decimals with word problems, and this will be a good like review day coming back from spring break. Prior to spring break, a day on subtracting, a day on adding, a day on comparing, a day on ordering. And this is where I ended up kind of with an extra day because I also came back to the beginning and I said, all right, we're gonna spend a day on modeling tenths, a day on expanded notation, a day on modeling hundredths, a day on the equivalence between tenths and hundredths, and then having mixed units in different forms. So for example, it would say like 12 tenths and getting them to realize that that's really 1 whole and then 2 tenths. So we've got a couple of days on that. And then this day can kind of get moved around. So if we want to allow an extra day for STAAR review, we can. If we get backed up at some point and need an extra day. So I like just kind of having this as a loosey-goosey day. So things may shift up, things may shift back, but we do have a day built in. And in terms of what it looked like, I had our math curriculum pulled up here. So I was going lesson by lesson and figuring out what's essential. I also had the overviews listed here and I was just trying to map it out. So this may change, but you know, it's a plan, it's a starting point. Sometimes all you need is, you don't even need a plan, you just need a PLA. And I think that's what I got right now. All right, here is what I came up with. We're gonna try it, see how it goes. If I need to make changes, I can. But right in front of my board, we have 4 rows with 3 seats in each one. And then this way, pivoted so that it's facing the board. They're groups of 2 with the exception of this front one, which is a group of 3. So that way they're all like somewhat oriented toward the board. They've got little pods or groups. I don't know, we're gonna try it. My biggest thing is making sure that I have enough space to walk in between because that was my challenge with my last desk arrangement. So hopefully this is a little bit better. I need to make a seating chart, but I don't know, we're just gonna go with it. Y'all, do you ever have those days where you feel like you should just go to bed and try again the next day because nothing is going right? That was me today. And if you've never had one of those days, don't tell me because it will make me feel worse about myself, but it was one thing after another today. It all started this morning when about 5 minutes before my students were coming in, I decided to get my breakfast out of my refrigerator. I shared this in my last vlog, but I have been meal prepping some different things. So for breakfast each day, I've been packing some Greek yogurt with blueberries, and then I also drink a protein shake. Well, I opened the refrigerator door, and as soon as I opened it, the yogurt slid out onto the floor. Of course, I pack it in a glass container and we have a strip of tile in the back of the room and it fell right on the tile, shattered everywhere. My team teachers all heard it and came in and thankfully like they were so helpful and they were, you know, getting wet wipes and we were picking up all the pieces and they're like, call the custodian so they can come up and vacuum, and they were all offering me like, I've got extra yogurt, I've got this, because they know I get hangry. But at that point I was just so overwhelmed and like, it's not a big deal, but it's just like, of course, 5 minutes before my students come in. And granted, it was trying to clean up the glass. Like that was my biggest priority, especially before my students came in. But also, I used the little wild blueberries from Costco, and so they're teeny tiny, and they were just everywhere. And I'm like trying not to step on them because they stain, and it was just, oh, it was a lot. And then shortly after, during math, I mentioned that I've been using the M&Ms to like entice my students to participate, and it's been great. I basically take the lid of the container and I pour some M&Ms on it, and I was holding it and dropped it all over my carpet. And of course my students are like, grab them! And I said, sure, grab them. You're putting them in the trash. You're not eating them. But that happened, and then at one point I had students who were making up work, and I gave one student the wrong paper, and I could not win. It was rough. I made it though. It's the end of the day. And thankfully, I got math homework graded, I got their math assignment graded, my afternoon class I still have to put into the grade book, but it's at least graded. And I have moved desks, so other than making a seating chart, I'm gonna get out of here because I think it's in everybody's best interest. We had a wonderful Lunar New Year lunch that was prepared by some of our families at our school, and it was the biggest spread of various, dishes, and it was so fantastic. Now, I just picked out some of the veggies and I had them on a plate, and of course we get back to class and I'm holding my plate and I'm eating it with my chopsticks, and my students are like, are you sure you want to be holding the plate like after the day you've been having? I'm like, you're right, I should probably put this down. But I hope that you enjoyed this video. And maybe feel bad for me, I don't know. If you did enjoy it though, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Truly, subscribing, it doesn't cost anything, and hitting that thumbs up, it helps to let me know what kinds of videos you wanna see, and it's a way to support my channel. So thank you, I appreciate you. As always, I love you so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, especially in moments like this. I'll catch you in the next one. I'm done for today, or at least my brain is.